This is Bob again reporting. It's July 8th. Today, the Met Council is scheduled to vote on their revised plan for Southwest Light Rail. They say the project cost is now $1.744 billion. But there is a question as to whether the total cost is really higher. That number includes an expected federal match of $30 million for the value of land that Hennepin County is contributing. But that number does not include the valuation of the land as a local contribution. In effect, it's being treated in their total of $1.744 billion as zero value for the local contribution, but when it comes to asking the feds for matching money, they're treating it as $30 million. You'll see from the video of my testimony to the Hennepin County Board yesterday and my interview with Mark Furman of the Met Council, he's the head of the New Starts program, that in fact the plan that they have is based on expecting to get $195 million from the federal government for what Hennepin County is contributing, although the share for Hennepin County based on the $1.65 billion budget is supposed to be $165 million. I'll be sending a news release out on this today.
Questions at this point? Then let me offer a chance for public comment if you'd like to come forward. Our process is to allow people to speak for 3 minutes, and Ms. Clark will be manning the lights. You're probably familiar with them, but if you'd start with your name and your address, and then you'll see a green light, a yellow light when you have half a minute left, and the red light will be assigned to stop. So, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and one of the things that's been very distressing to me is that this thing's being rushed through at the Met Council. There is no public hearing being held on this by the Met Council.
If you give your name.
Yeah, Bob again. I go by the moniker Bob again Carney Jr., 4232 Colfax, South Minneapolis. A couple of concerns about this. The discussion is on a $90 million increase in the budget, but you know, when you look at the numbers, you're talking about $30 million in federal matching dollars that's associated with the valuation of the land from Hennepin County, and you're talking about $25 million that's matching local dollars. So there's a total federal match of $55 million. Now, the feds are matching 50%. So if $55 million is 50%, then the total dollar amount must be $110 million. So the fact is that in the project cost, what is being reported as the project cost, the contribution of land from Hennepin County is still being treated at $0, although it's being treated at $30 million for the purpose of seeking federal money. One of the questions that I have here is that when you go back to the original budget of $1.65 billion, 10% of that is $165 million. My understanding is Hennepin County is still planning on contributing a total of $165 million cash. But when you count the value of this $30 million plus the $8 million, $5 million that's being discussed today, another $3 million, you're talking about an additional $38 million. So Hennepin County apparently is contributing value to this project that's $38 million above the 10%. I think that needs to be discussed. And beyond that, I talked to Speaker Dowd. You know, the legislature, and I lobbied for this. I'm a registered lobbyist at the state of Minnesota. I lobby for We the People. The legislature eliminated a previous appropriation of $30 million for Southwest. They've now got $15 million into it. So when you go back to this $165 million for the state's contribution, there's $150 million missing. I talked to Speaker Dowd and asked him, is there any more money going in from the legislature on this? He said no. There is no more state money going into this. So you've got a $150 million gap, and the Met Council's kind of staging an upside-down revolution of the bureaucrats. Their motto is taxation without representation. Forget the is tyranny part. That's what they're campaigning for. They're saying we're going to use this mechanism of these certificates of participation to potentially get $150 million. This is going to be a huge monkey wrench next year when a transportation bill is being discussed for the state. These are things that have to be thought through. This plan is a very bad plan for transit. The whole thing is turning into a disaster. I hope that we just stop this thing and go back to the drawing board. Thank you.
Anybody else care to speak this afternoon? Good afternoon.
My name is Frank Lorenz. I live in Hennepin County District 6, Edina, Minnesota. The people from Met Council aren't exactly lying, but they are creatively shading the truth, and I'd like to try to go back a little bit. The bulk of the soil remediation money is will be spent to clean up the maintenance operation area site in Hopkins. You don't really need a maintenance facility, but the federal government, as they have allowed this project, this being the whole transit system, to be broken into short segments of 11 or 16 miles, their words require that you have to have a maintenance facility for every light rail line. Now, the area in Chicago has a heavy rail line that's 400 some miles long. They have 3 maintenance facilities. If you build Southwest Light Rail, then your total lines will be blue, green, and Southwest, and they'll have a combined total of about 37 miles. You will have 3 maintenance facilities, and the reason Met Council wants a maintenance facility is because they're chasing the precious federal dollars, the 50% match. You don't need a maintenance facility. You've got a massive one just in South Minneapolis. You have a sub-maintenance facility at the end of the line near Union Depot. You don't need a third one, but they don't want to give it up because they covet the 50% match. Changing the subject to using the $3 million from Community Works is something like marrying your grandfather. That Community Works transit-oriented development grants are supposed to support development, commercial development along the line after the line is built. Now you're reaching forward and using that money to help build the line. Beyond that, Hennepin County Regional Rail Authority was going to sell the property, the right-of-way properties that they have on the books from decades ago at nominal cost because they were donated by abandoning rail lines. They were going to sell it to the project for $30 million. Now Commissioner McLaughlin wants to give it to the project, which means that Hennepin County Regional Rail Authority going forward will not have a reimbursement of $30 million, which will impair their ability to do the next line, which is Bottenau coming along. Finally, in 2010, Commissioner McLaughlin worked with CTIB and convinced Hennepin County to buy a $110 million note from CTIB. They needed that to timely fund the Green Line project. Now, this is not Hennepin County issuing bonds as you've done for other entities. Hennepin County bought a note with a face value of $103 million, or $102.8 million, and they paid $110 million for it. And doing that, they gave a permanent gift to CTIB of $7 million.
And so that means your time is up.
All right, fine. So Hennepin County is going to be in, thanks to Commissioner McLaughlin, for hundreds of millions of dollars more than you think they are to get this project going.
Thank you. Any other comments this afternoon?
This is my question. Is this really $15 value with I'm 15 million with a 15 million match? I'm going to do mine by myself.
Okay.
Oh, orange line.
I describe myself as a candidate journalist, Bob again. I've got a question about this Hennepin County land valuation. My understanding is, first, let's just try to get the dollars straight. My understanding is that the budget includes $30 million of anticipated federal dollars that are matching. So in effect, the land is being valued at $30 million, and then the feds are going to contribute 30 million as matching dollars. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, my next question is, my understanding is that the earlier plan was that Hennepin County was going to donate this land at no value, or zero value. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if it is now being valued at $30 million, doesn't that represent an additional contribution by Hennepin County to the project? So, in effect, the plan for $1.65 billion was to have Hennepin County provide 10%, $165 million in cash. Now, that has not changed. That part of it has not changed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so they're contributing the $165 million in cash, and they're also contributing land that is now valued at $30 million. So isn't their contribution to the project based on those two items $195 million, not $165 million? If the land is worth $30 million and they're contributing it, and they're still contributing $165 million, isn't Hennepin County contributing $195 million to the project?
Can I respond?
Yeah.
The county railroad authority had been planning and anticipating to donate the land in their Hennepin County owned corridor. And so the only change that we have here is where now we're putting a valuation on that donation, now an in-kind donation, because we are able then to use the value, the intrinsic value of that, for the purposes of leveraging and pulling in $30 million of federal match. So it's really no additional out-of-pocket contribution by the railroad authority.
It's certainly a valid distinction, but in terms of the value of the land, you know, if you're assigning it an economic value of $30 million, is it, in your view, a reasonable interpretation to say that the total economic value that Hennepin County is contributing is $195 million, representing the $30 million in the value of that land, plus the $165 million, which is the cash amount? Do you think that's a reasonable way of looking at it?
No, I don't, because nothing has changed from 2014 when the county made its $165 million cash commitment, as well as donation of their Hennepin County owned corridor. Today, the county is making a $165 million cash commitment and agreeing to donate their property, which now we've put a value on it so that we can use it to pull in more federal match.
Let me ask you this, and just to cut to the chase, is it true that regarding what Hennepin County is contributing, the feds are matching $195 million in cash for those two items? The feds are providing $195 million total in terms of matching what Hennepin County is contributing, including the land.
The Fed out of the United States Treasury would be bringing in $195 million.
Okay. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to make this distinction, which I think is a reasonable distinction. So, you know, we'll have to agree to disagree on perhaps on how we interpret this. And I appreciate your statement.
Sure.
Thank you.